strategy. Wrong answer. Okay? Those things don't go together. So you got to see who's talking to who and who matches who. So that will help you make sure you safely make it to survey. Because of course, you don't want to tell us that you've decided that the research question is calling for a qualitative design and you're going to go out and collect surveys. Oh boy. You want to give us a heart attack for real. Okay. So that's why you want to see what goes with what, because of course quantitative study would call for the surveys, whereas a qualitative study would call for a variety of the qualitative data collection methods. So again, let's not mix the design with the data collection method. They're two different things, but it's a design that's telling us, for example, a mixed methods design is telling us that maybe we need surveys and focus group. But we only know that because of the nature of the research question or the hypothesis that has been set up. Now, there are various sources of evidence. Sources of evidence, that just has a ring to it. Sources of evidence. When we think about sources of evidence, we must also think about triangulation. This, again, helps us with the coherence, because the triangulation is basically you, the researcher, saying that I conducted naturalistic observation, I conducted physical artifact research as a source of evidence, I conducted interviews, I conducted surveys, and when I look at the result, the end result from all this data, as far as this particular research objective is concerned, this data says this, that data says the other. Do they converge? Do they disagree with each other? Whatever the case may be, it does not matter what the outcome is. What matters is your ability to understand how you got there, to explain how you got there, and to explain your findings as a result of how you started at the beginning. But triangulation lets us know whether or not these sources of evidence, the results from the sources of evidence, converge as far as answering the research question or achieving each one of those research objectives, or testing that hypothesis in terms of the interaction of the variables. So moving on from our data collection, then we have our trusty friend, data analysis. Now, I always recommend you don't want to wait till the end to start thinking about data analysis. Research is something that's iterative or iterative, or however you say the word. It's very important to understand that there's no stopping and starting. There's a lot of parallelism, because you can be analyzing your data while you're collecting your data. And you must be writing while you're collecting your data. It's not a situation where you go out and collect all your data and you do that for 2 or 3 months, and then you come home and sit down, or go to the research commons and sit down, and now another 2 or 3 months you're writing. Why? It's more important to do these things in tandem with each other for several reasons. First of all, it makes you a sharper researcher because you're starting to understand what's coming in as it's coming in. And then secondly, you're working smart as opposed to waiting until you get to the end of the line, or even finding out that there's something that you left out or something that you should have, would have, could have done, but now you're done with the data collection and there's nothing you can do about it. For example, when I was conducting research for my doctoral thesis, I started out with, I think I had like 4 different variables, a dependent and, I started out with a dependent and 2 independent variables. But then while I was in the field collecting data, the people that I would be interviewing or having focus groups with, they all kept telling me the same thing about a point that I had never even thought of. Never even thought of. But this is particularly true in qualitative research, because things are going to happen in the field. If things aren't happening in the field, something's wrong. And you're going to find out things, hopefully, that you didn't know. So what I had to do, since so many people were bringing up this same issue, I had to go back, reshape things, and make that also an independent variable, because these are the people who know what's happening. I was the scholar sitting back, reading the literature and trying to figure out how to design this research. But once you get out there, it's what the people say. If you're conducting qualitative research, that matters. So these things need to be done in tandem with each other. Another good thing about that is one day you might feel like data collection, and the next day you might feel like writing. But all these days you got to feel like some of these things. Okay. So now other forms of course, SPS data, and there are others that deal with quantitative research. In vivo is a method for qualitative research, and so are template, data matrix, and explanation building. Now, I'm not saying you need all of these, but you want to pick and choose which one is best suited for the type of work that you're doing. Something like data matrix, for example, will help you because you can use it to analyze the data, but now that you already have this matrix, you can then use it to present the data, and you can turn it into a table to showcase what your findings are. Speaking of presentation, presentation is very, very important. And the process may seem long, but it's really not that arduous, especially if you keep the vision of how beautiful everything is going to be in the end. And how good you're going to feel when you sit down with your supervisor and talk to your supervisor about the accomplishments and receive further guidance and instruction from your supervisor on how you're thinking you're at the top of the mountain and the supervisor is saying, not yet. So, that just helps you build on to the next step. So the presentation can be computer generated in terms of the pie charts, graphs, tables, the data matrices that I just spoke to you about, and of course the template presentation. Now, template is a very interesting thing because the template can actually help you from the time that you're setting up your particular data collection instruments all the way through to the data collection, all the way through to the presentation of the findings, because the template is more or less you having a hunch about how you think a certain thing is going to pan out, and then as the data comes in, either yes or no. Is it like that or it's not? Is it different from that? How many are like that? It's kind of like the explanation building as a part of an analysis. So free thinking is very, very important in order to capture the information at hand. And this, of course, is our cherished moment of writing up and deciding, okay, now we're done with our master's, and that doctoral registration is waiting for us, right? Hello? Are you still there? Did I lose you? So no, the write up and the way forward. Now, there's no such thing as good writing. I'm sure you've heard that before. There's no such thing as good writing. So we all have to get over that. There's only good rewriting. There's only good editing. So instead of sitting there saying, oh, I might not get this right, or this today I feel this way, tomorrow I feel that way, next day I don't even want to see this stuff. You want to remember that until you get it out, you're not going to move on. So you want to just sit there, get it out, and then get some help if you're not happy with what's coming out. And you'll be surprised because you might come up with, let's say you write 2 or 3 pages, and you end up finding that what you got to on the 3rd page is really the beginning of what you're trying to write about. But you're not going to know that until you get it out. You're not going to know what's coming up until you make that step. So get ready for the drafts. Drafts are beautiful things. Every time you have a draft, every time you get all those beautiful red marks, all those beautiful track changes from your supervisor, rejoice. Be happy. Be glad. Because you know you're making success. And when you find that you go back and make those changes where you don't just say, accept all changes, but you actually go back and say, what did I did wrong? What did I did wrong? Okay, let me watch the English here. What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Because in writing, sometimes we make the same mistakes over and over again because it's the way our brain is working. And we can reprogram our brain, but we cannot reprogram our brain until we know what it is that we think should be done a certain way when it really should not be done that way. So take advantage of the opportunity for drafts and use those drafts as a learning mechanism to take you further. Because the more you become accustomed to what the typical mistakes that you make are over and over again, the more you will teach yourself how to improve it. Just look at it as a rewrite. I even find that with the undergrads. The undergrads are doing a lot of research papers now. And it's really a value in rewrites of the research paper. Because let's say they finish the paper, give it to us, get a mark, move on, they pass or they don't. But if they have to do a rewrite and they see, oh, I did this wrong. Oh, I keep putting this comma here when it's not supposed to be. And that whole situation. So, long story short, value your drafts and your rewrites. Make sure that you have the interaction between methodology and findings. Now, this is something that goes again to the coherence. And this is something that you can teach yourself to be doing all along. Constantly asking yourself, am I making sure that my ontological perspective is speaking to the research question and the research objectives? And when it's time to write up, see, you weren't doing all that just for the fun of it. You were doing all that because when it's time to write up, you have to justify it. You have to justify why you picked those methods. You have to justify why you picked the research design. You have to justify why you picked that research strategy. And you have to indicate why it is that that strategy was best suited for that particular research question or for that particular hypothesis. So we're not just recommending this for you to do for the sake of it. We're saying this because we know at the end of the line, if you don't know how to do this, you might be another year finishing your work. Because when you actually write it up, that's where the rubber hits the road and you have to demonstrate the coherence that you were supposed to have all the way along. Now, of course, also your research will show what the lessons learned were, as well as the theories discovered, if that's the type of strategy that you have. New knowledge, visions of future research is also important. Now, I know it's a requirement for a doctoral thesis that new knowledge be created, but if you're a master's student, that doesn't mean that you're prohibited from creating new knowledge, okay? Because it may be that you find a gap in the literature, you find certain problems that exist, and then you come up through your research with new information or new knowledge that can take that particular body of knowledge forward. And then what's a great reward for that? A publication with your supervisor. What else? Fantastic. Now you have really moved along and also done so much, not just for yourself as an individual, but for our school, for our college, and of course, for our university. So I thank you very much.